Ed Hewling and Ruth Oddie are here. Ed has decades of experience as an organic farmer. He is an innovator and a thought leader in developing methods to rebuild depleted cells and grow food with high nutrient density. He developed SBC's breakthrough fertility amendment over 20 years of rigorous testing, including a year-long partnership with a senior research scientist at USDA. These methods are now being used to address the climate crisis, including restoring forests to cool the planet and improving farm crop to yield and grow more food per acre. Ruth Oddie was part of the team that launched MTV, was the first president of the Discovery Channel, and an EVP of Scholastic, a highly respected and innovative educational publishing company. She is Ed's wife and helps ensure effective communications, as all our wives do, project management, and partnerships that deliver on our promises to customers to help cool our planet.
Thank you all. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here. I want to thank Peter Dawson for introducing us to the chamber, and we have so many things to share with you today. I'm going to hop right to, but there's a couple of things I need to say. First of all, as Hal said, 23 years we've been at this with this never-stopping passion to ensure that our soils have the nutrients that then end up in the plants and the things we eat. Because if it's not there, the chromium or the selenium or whatever, it's not in the soil, it's not in the plant, and it's not in us. And we need all these minerals to survive and thrive. So basically what we want to do today is tell you what we see happening in the world, particularly around the intersection of climate change and farming. And I want to say that we can only see through the lens of farmers. We're not climate experts, we're not scientists, we are simply devoted people trying to make food better and make farmers more productive and help to replant forests. And so we decided that given that you're all adults, you run businesses, you run organizations, that we can share with you our interpretation of what's really going on. And some of that is not too easy to listen to, so we apologize in advance. We have some rough news in the beginning of this, but there are solutions that we have. There are many people working on these things. So we're going to share kind of our view of what's going on and then what we're going to do to try to make an impact, what our company is, where we're headed. So, we there? Did I forget anything? Sure. Okay. Oh, first of all, you obviously need to understand the problem before you can invent solutions. So we're going to start with that. You all know that, having run organizations and made things happen. So,
okay.
Go ahead, Dre.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and we hope you enjoy your lunch and learn something here. So, humans have been caught up in a vicious cycle for the past 10,000 years, ever since agriculture began. That cycle destroyed many civilizations over that time, and it will destroy us if we don't find a way out of this cycle. We believe that we have developed part of the solution to do so, and that, as Ruth said, there's many other brilliant people working on this, but there's not much time, and there's not enough resources at this point being invested to solve these issues. So let me explain. Humans have been cutting and burning trees since agriculture began in order to open the soil to the sun. Our ancestors planted their crops in rich soil created by trees. As the population grew, they cut down more trees, and that is the trap. Because trees generate rain and they cool the earth locally and globally. So what happened every time is that over a period of at least hundreds of years, soil became more and more depleted. What this meant is that the amount of food that could be grown on a given plot of land kept decreasing as the population of that civilization kept growing. The solution was always to cut down more and more trees, faster and faster, for more fresh land to farm. When they cut down trees on hillsides, rain literally washed the topsoil into the valleys and out to sea. The collapse of each civilization came when the size of the population and the deforested area grew large enough to disrupt the rain and to heat up the region to the point where a catastrophic drought And summer heat, combined with the lower soil output, caused crop failures at a level that caused starvation or migration of the population. When this occurred in tropical or semi-tropical areas, this destruction of soil and loss of rain became permanent as deserts as we know them now.
So let's take a look at where we are in this historical reconstruction that Ed just shared with you. So there's recently, maybe a year ago or so, the IPCC reported the following. Do you know who that is? The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's like 270 scientists from around the world, distinguished, very smart people who are monitoring many different aspects of climate change.
Yeah,
so go ahead and share the number.
So it's a disturbing number. They've reported now that 46% of all the surface of the land area on Earth is now desert or arid wasteland, which basically means we can't grow food without assistance from irrigation or other assistance. So that really begs the question, how long can we keep on with this cycle before it's unsustainable?
I think I should say that a lot of people cutting down trees weren't doing any harm as far as they could see. They were feeding their families, or they had made promises to a local store as a farmer and to deliver it. And even for me, I don't know how about you all, but this news that forests generate rain and cool the earth by literally exporting heat to the outer space is not something I knew. Like, I love trees, but now that I get that, every tree being cut is not getting rid of the heat and is not generating rain. That's a really big issue. So basically, there are many, many, many warnings about this. If you guys go on and look around, you'll feel worse than we've made you feel right now. You came for a nice lunch and to see your friends and people you care about, and here we are, like, with this heavy thing. But there's a lot going on to fix the situation, let me repeat. So basically, many, many scientists are warning now that what could happen when there is this catastrophic lack of water, lack of food, is disruptions in the order of society. People desperate, people leaving, stealing, doing whatever they have to do to feed their family. And many other experts are predicting, very sorry to tell you this, but that the Amazon rainforest now, which brings rain to the US in the West Coast, and it affects us, is so reduced and so shrunken in chunks all around that it could become a dry savanna. Like, literally, this rain generator could become desert-like. The other thing is that as we cut down trees, then the earth can't deal, then we could, suffer more rain shortages, basically. So you can read about this and you can see some of the impact of what's happened. But this is not just about the rainforest. The things we're talking to you about that trees do, like here in this area, we don't realize the problem because we have such magnificent forests. Every trip you take, you're seeing beautiful countryside, and those trees are doing this. They are getting rid of the heat for us, and they are generating rain for us. It'll tell you scientifically why. And we've now talked about this, Ed, so I'm going to pass that. So let us just give you the primer, because this is important to the next chapter.
Yeah, so the simple story on trees is basically the sun shines on the tree, it hits the leaves are a little bit dark green, the leaves heat up, and just like water in a pan on your stove evaporates, the water inside the tree leaves evaporates. The tree pulls up water from the ground, it evaporates it, and when that evaporation happens, something very important happens, is that it basically withdraws heat or removes heat around the tree, around the leaves, at the ground level. And since water vapor is significantly lighter than air, the water vapor is buoyed up into the upper atmosphere, where once it reaches the atmosphere, it's cold, it condenses, forms clouds, and the heat that was removed from the surface of the Earth gets released up in the atmosphere, and then most of that heat radiates back out to space. So basically, trees are amazing machines for taking heat at the Earth's surface and facilitating that heat being removed and radiated back out to space.
So when you take a walk with your grandchild in a forest, you know it's cooler. Now you know why. The trees all around us all the time are exporting excess heat.
And other evidence is like the average temperature in the Amazon rainforest is only 83 degrees, even though it's near the equator. Whereas if you go into desert areas without trees, you can have temperatures as high as 150 degrees, 60, 170 degrees at the ground level in deserts. So that's the difference. When we're talking about heating up the planet, literally trees are removing that heat, whereas once the trees are gone, the surface of the earth heats up. That radiation then is what it basically intersects the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, heats up the atmosphere, ultimately heats up the oceans, and that's how
it can't escape the way that the vapor from the trees is. From the barren land, it just gets trapped in the atmosphere.
So anyway, so trees are crucial for cooling the earth, and then the other equally important thing is that this evaporation that happens as it goes up into the atmosphere, when it condenses, forms clouds. Most of the rain that happens over land areas is coming through evaporation from plants. So it's basically recycled water from plants. So that once the plants or trees are no longer there, then you don't have that evaporation and the rain stops, which is, we can see more and more all over the world.
Or droughts and prolonged.
A couple other important details is that trees evolved symbioses that facilitated the rain, including that there are bacteria that are emitted from the stomata of trees that float up into the atmosphere, and they're called precipitation nuclei. In other words, for a water molecule in the atmosphere to actually aggregate into a raindrop, you need something to aggregate around. And the bacteria that are emitted by tree leaves are those nuclei. So if you don't have these nuclei, then rain rain doesn't form unless the temperature is much lower. So anyway, basically trees and this partnership with microbes are creating a situation where there's more rain, which of course trees need, and it helps them survive. But we need the rain as well.
Okay, so to sum it up for you then, this Russian woman who's a leader in all of this says, forests are complex, self-sustaining rain-making systems. I mean, isn't that a beautiful summary of, we should have said that maybe first and we wouldn't have had to explain all this to you, but now you know there's all this, biology and thermodynamics and everything else underneath it. But the bottom line is we cut forests, we're interfering with the cooling of the earth directly, and we're helping stop rainfall. We're shortening the likelihood that we can have rain. So it is very serious when you look at the deforestation rates that are actually happening around the world. So just to close this topic now and go on, this one quote from the Rainforest Foundation in Oslo is just so beautiful to explain it. Humans continue to chop down rainforests into smaller pieces, thus reducing their ability to store carbon, cool the planet, produce rain, and provide habitats. So you can see this pink area that was all, destroyed. It's a beautiful summary of what we just tried to explain to you. And then there's all kind of scientists so worried about certain rainforests around the world getting closer to when the loss of tree cover will finally push it past the point of no return, losing our greatest shield against rising temperatures. So that's the bad news. Okay.
Ruth, let me mention one thing is you might say, well, how does one project like that, or even multiple projects, when there's still trees around, it's disproportionately important because since water over land gets transported mostly from the ocean, then when you have significant areas that are breaking the continuity from that water vapor from the ocean onto land, at a certain point, you don't get water farther inland. And that's why, these big projects in the Amazon are beginning to be so significant. that they're interrupting this flow of moisture deeper and deeper into the continents.
Okay, so given this set of issues, we have to stay on our time track. So, and what we know in terms of being farmers for this many years, what are we doing? So we have two areas where we think that we can contribute. First is in restoring soil, restoring the richness and the aliveness of soil, which we've been working on for a very long time, to grow more food per acre. If we could grow more food per acre, then there wouldn't be nearly as much pressure to cut trees for fertile land. And then secondly, in forests, our goal is to plant literally millions of trees. And to do so, giving it this nutrient base to start, giving it a strong, beginning of minerals and microbes and things that all plants need right at the beginning of the little baby trees' lives, so that we can obviously help the cooling and the rainfall that we've just been talking about. So the soil fertility story is a key part of this. Ed's been at this for 20 years, and over the last 4 years, working with you, Peter, as the DNR on the land in Hopewell and in Hillsborough and in Southampton, we've been doing really large tests of this soil fertility and its impact. So tell them just a little bit about this.
Yeah, the first few years as an organic farmer, I really struggled because, soils are so depleted that when you try to grow crops without pesticides, then you've got insect problems and disease problems, and it was a real struggle.
We thought you planted seeds and they grew. Oh. Soil science is so complicated, trying to diagnose why, and this aphid is here, and this, it was really, really challenging. So then we had to get inside to figure out, tell them about the Andes and everything.
Yeah, so really I sort of took a step back and said, let me look at soils that, virgin soils, whether they're virgin grasslands or forests, study the soil, see if I can understand what's going on, what those soils have that are producing, magnificent trees and other crops that are missing for us here. And that's really the beginning of what helped me recreate soil, create the way to restore soils. It turns out that there's literally thousands of species of beneficial microbes in healthy soil. There's dozens of essential elements that the trees need, that we need, that animals need, that have been basically extracted by crop production year after year that need to be replaced.
Chromium, selenium, zinc, just...
Yeah, look at the table of elements. I mean, most of those elements, humans and animals and plants evolved needing, and by extracting them with agriculture and not returning them, you end up with soil that can't support optimal plant growth or health of the whole ecosystem. And then the other thing is that with plowing, with cropping, with various forms of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, then the organic matter, the brown or black stuff here, gets oxidized. So you end up with soil that's compacted, water doesn't permeate into it, and crops don't grow very well. So basically we came up with a formula that restores all those essential elements so that you can get much higher crop productivity and grow a lot more.
So we'll show you some pictures of what we've been able to do with this soil. It's really, really more fun than what we've been talking about. Okay, so basically, at this point, I think you've said it all. You give them plants what they need in a form they can take it. The balance of everything is right. There's so much went into it. Over literally 20 years, we were growing these microgreens. So every week, he could vary some aspect, some mineral, some aspect of it, and then do a soil test, and then see, did it get into the plant or not, right? And is the plant, what kind of condition is the plant in now? So it was endless. It's like all we talked about, like, I tried with the magnesium, and but it was tough too, because we didn't know we'd end up with something. We ended up with something that we can look a farmer in the eye and say, this is going to improve your soil significantly, your yield, your crop, flavor, and your crop, how would you say, the crop integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years of that, and then we went to test it on a big scale. We tested it a lot in small places all around Virginia, where we used to live, down by DC. And now over the last 3 years, as I said, we've had these large tests, 40, 50 acres, and we're going to show you a little bit about that. So the first thing we do, this is a really crucial part, is the soil product that he just described with all those beautiful traits gets spread all around the land of our farmer partner. And we just, it has to be a big dose. It's 10 tons per acre because it has to make a difference on extensive depleted soils. Okay, so here's what we got this past summer in Southampton, New Jersey. You can just see the beautiful field. I mean, this is about 6 weeks in, right? Tell them what they're looking at in terms of what kind of plants these are.
Yeah, it's just a mixed forage plants that cows love for grazing, Sudan grass and sunflowers, millet, cowpeas.
You want your cows to be eating the most nutrient-dense, food every inch of the way. Why? Because they're eating machines. You want to fatten them up so that you can sell them for a good price for meat. So you can see here that we were just thrilled with this, result. Particularly when all of June and July this past summer, a lot of New Jersey looked like this, central New Jersey. It was a horrendous drought. And this is the same farm where we were right next to, right what you just saw. So every single day it was just like crazy making. Like I would go home and think, oh my God, what if our plants are just all going to die and drop dead because we had this green, magnificent stuff, and this was around it. We brought the corn to show you. It was devastating for the farmers here. Many of them had to plow their entire crop under. Like this stuff was planted in April on the left, and you can see that it just was
once the
very bad.
hot dry period came, basically the corn stopped growing and ultimately died.
And this is a really large, successful farm, but they don't have irrigation. It's very, very expensive. Sometimes you don't have the throughput of enough water. So none of this got any. So just to remind you again, this is just another shot of our field. And, the cows were, so happy, and it was a real thrill to produce this. And to know that we could do it in the middle of a drought. And essentially, I think the roots were able to find water somehow.
Well, the mycorrhizal fungi in our inoculant basically extends out from the roots and collects water that the roots by themselves wouldn't be able to acquire. And we're happy about this because, as you know, there's more and more inconsistent rainfall, drier, there's dry periods that are causing crop losses all around the world. So for us to be able to restore soil and work our way through severe drought periods. Basically, we had 1/16 of an inch of rain for 8 weeks this summer. The entire life of this crop had 1/16 of an inch of rain. So that's what's possible. And think about what this could mean for food production around the world if we restored the biology and these minerals.
Okay, so then another farm we worked at was Lima Family Farms. They have a great sort of store where they sell their things. You might know them from out there in Hillsborough. So why don't you tell them about this, because this is another
Right, we planted basically the same mix there, and these are one of the things that we plant that the cows love is what's called tillage radishes, these giant radishes. But
it's like a daikon radish like that, but not as bitter.
The sample on my right hand it received our fertility amendment, and then the one on my left hand was in a neighboring field, a control field without our amendment, that got the same seeds, and you can see the difference in growth. It's just a huge difference in growth. John said to me this past October, when pretty much his other grasses had shut down for the season, he called me and he said, Ed, we put our fertility. The plants are literally exploding out of the ground in October. So it just really makes a difference in crop productivity.
Okay, so, and then this is how we met Peter. This is the St. Michael's Farm Preserve in Hopewell, the beautiful space in the center of the village, or the township, I guess you call it. So we planted this forage mixture there, and this is the same result. One of them is just that the camera angle is from the top. I think Bodie took this picture on a ladder. We forgot to introduce our colleague who's here. And then you're looking straight into the same crop on the right side. But you can see I think it was 8 feet tall.
At 9 feet. So this isn't corn. These are grasses. These are, annual summer grasses for animals.
It's called Sudan grass. But look what happened. We had 6 times more product, 6 times more Sudan grass grow than
the control fields
that didn't get our fertility.
Right nearby.
The protein content of that forage was 50% higher than the group that didn't get our fertility. So that really helps the animal weight gain aspect, right? They're eating this nutrient-dense food, but it's higher in protein. The cow weight gain per day is twice as high, which we were thrilled about.
Which by itself doubles farm income, because farmers get paid by how much weight they're putting on their animals. So by doubling the weight gain and providing more forage, it makes a huge difference to farmers.
So we were really excited about this whole experience. And we wanted to now give you a little bit more sense of our farming system, besides applying the fertilizer, our fertility, which is first, then planting this extra nutritious food for the cows, so they're eating something that tastes great and is very nutritious, and then how they graze. So Ed will tell you about how we graze animals.
Right, so the core really is the fertility, which restores soil productivity. With grazing systems in this area, since you have periods of the year where you don't have good grass growth, like in the fall and in the spring where it's cold, and in the middle of summer, pretty much grass growth stops. So we help farmers with interplanting in the summertime, warm, heat-loving crops so that they get good production in the summertime, and then we interplant cool season crops in the fall and the spring to help get more growth in the fall when they're not getting much grass. The other important aspect of our farming, our animal-based farming system, is that we've made a few modifications to how the animals are grazed, which boosts long-term grass productivity and builds soil over a continuous basis. Basically, again, just like we did with soil, we emulated natural grazing patterns. You have large herds of animals. They're tightly packed together.
Like the bison and the Great Plains.
Because you've got wolves chasing them, and in Africa you've got wildebeest with lions chasing them. And what this does is changes the animal behavior. It's as though they're competing with the cow right next to them for whatever grass is there. So they're, something that in a relaxed pasture where they can eat anything they want, where they're picking and choosing green shoots of grass, out, in this environment, they're eating everything. So that most pastures around the world, what happens is they don't like a particular plant or call it a weed. That weed goes to seed, it propagates. Next year, you've got 10 times more of what the animal doesn't want. So, and then the other major thing is that animals, when they like a particular piece of grass, they're going to eat it down to the ground, and that's not good for the grass, is because it takes a long time for it to reestablish roots and regrow. In nature, chased by predators, that generally didn't happen because they didn't have time to do that, because there's a sense that they're being chased, so the whole herd is moving steadily, and you're not overgrazing the grass. So basically, we've just recreated a grazing pattern that elicits these natural behaviors, so they don't eat the grass too short, they eat all the weeds, and then over time...
Or they bite the weed and spit it out, but it's still being cut.
So that over the long period of time, we're increasing soil carbon, restoring soil, increasing grass productivity. So.
Okay, we have to move. Okay, so we've had great results in all these, as you got a flavor for, I hope, out of what we just said. Kind of still reinforcing to us that we can make this argument. If we can grow more food per acre, then we can avoid cutting forests, which is a hugely important thing. Our business model with the farmers is that we pay for the fertility, and then over 5 years we share the upside with them 50-50 from the incremental benefits that you got from all these different components of the system. So we believe this is a game-changing opportunity, and we feel very compelled to build an organization that can scale this and get it out to a lot more people, over in a very smart way, and make a contribution to the productivity of farms by, because it's so important. our time is passing, so I'm going to tell you just a little about our reforestation part of our business. This looks like a lot of text, but don't worry, it won't take that long. Our goal is to restore the fertility in forests too. We've now tested the same fertility amendment that he has been describing to you in forests and seen the same kind of remarkable difference. We'll show you the pictures and the results. So we make an opening in the ground and fill it with our fertility so that the young baby tree gets that directly and can sustain them against the competition that they're feeling right on the ground. We're also developing equipment make the planting more efficient and faster. The revenue model here is to sell carbon credits to fund the growth of these forests. So I want to show you the results very quickly. In Mercer County, they were doing a multi-year study of planting new trees to see how they could learn about reforesting here. And so we met them, and they agreed to have us put our fertility on 100 of their trees and then to pick a control group of 50 other trees. And they measured each tree and all that, and we did that. And you guys, there was a 71% faster growth rate to our trees than the soil without, the trees without our fertility. So it was a really exciting moment. Am I missed anything?
No.
No? Okay. So here's just a few examples. Is this a sycamore? Yeah. You can see on the left, let me go back. On the left is without our fertility, on the right is with our fertility. And then this is the sweet gum. Again, much more canopy on the right, much bigger. You can see here, this is a maple. Is it? Yes, the maple on the left is.
Yes, 70% of all the trees had already died before we started this demonstration project, before we arrived. And that's not atypical for reforestation projects.
It's the saddest thing. You can go on the internet and see people all over South America, all over Africa. You pay $1 and then MasterCard pays, to have a tree planted. But the die-off rate is 50% because that baby tree can't survive. So it's just heartbreaking because they're out there doing it, but if they had the right fertility, each tree could have a much bigger.
The soil fertility level, it's the same depleted soil that we're growing crops in, and so trees are struggling in this as well. So 70% of the trees had died before we started, and during the 2 years since we started this, we've seen a continuation of the control trees. Probably another 25 or 30% of those trees have died, but we've seen not one of the trees with our fertility amendment has died. So we increase tree longevity as well as the growth rate of the tree.
Okay, and then last piece, we took, John Lima gave us land and we planted 12,000 trees last summer. On the left, without our fertility, the trees got to be about 18 inches to 24 inches tall, and on the right, 4 feet to 7 feet, and with our fertility on the right. You can see one of our employees here. Anything else I should say about this? No. Everything's the same. They're right next to each other. There's no difference.
Might mention that this was all during the same extreme drought that we saw with the crop failure. So difficult year to grow anything. We did apply water to both the control trees and our trees a couple times, just during periods when we might have lost everything. But anyway, it was a difficult year, but you can see the difference when you have the microbiology.
Okay, so you guys, the last slide, where's Alice? We're close to on time. So basically, it seems so obvious, right? As a world, we have to stop deforestation. We have to stop cutting down trees at the rate that we are because of all the obvious benefits. We need to, number 2, restore soil fertility on farms so we can grow more food in the same amount of land and not need to cut down more forests. And then 3rd, improve how we regrow forests. You can see by the survival rate. And also, Ed didn't say, we forgot, that most of the trees that are being planted around the world is 1 or 2 species. We're planting 20 species because that gives you a whole set of different birds and bugs and rodents that follows so that the eventual forest will be biodiverse. But all these big
over
tree
90%
plantations.
of all trees being replanted around the world are single species tree plantations. And that is not good ecologically.
So it's like you're on the path to doing some good things as a world, but the tools and the philosophy behind it of just put the seed in is not enough in depleted soils. I hope we haven't overwhelmed you with the bad news. I really feel sad. It takes a while to get over that. At the same time, it's not just us doing things. We have met amazing people. As a matter of fact, just tell them 2 lines about the water retention, because that strategy is we're going to add into our package now for farms.
Yeah, just briefly, when even in North America, there was something like, tens of millions of beavers, and just sort of a simple rodent animal. But what they did was they dammed up little streams everywhere and basically hydrated the land. So basically what humans have done, as well as cutting the trees, is we've opened up all these waterways. We've drained drained these low areas to be able to grow more food. But all that water now, when you get hard rain with compacted soils, you all know what happens in the Mississippi and really flooding all over the world. The combination of compaction and removing these natural water retention elements creates enormous flooding, but just as bad is now when it gets to be hot and dry, the water that farmers need in the soil is no longer there. So we're working with some amazing groups and scientists to help us incorporate these water retention efforts into our tree planting, into our farms, to be able to hold these hard rains that we see.
Okay, can we take some questions, Alice? Okay, go ahead. You can.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is amazing, but how can this be done on a major scale?
Yeah, we're going to need a lot of allies and help.
When I think about just the area that drives me crazy all the time is when you go past all these large pharmaceutical buildings and they have acres of grass instead of having trees. To have green grass is expensive. It's bad for the water. It's bad for the soil, etc. So that's on a small scale, but on a large scale, how can this help farmers that are feeding billions of people, and what kind of production would be required to really make a difference?
Yeah, it's a great question.
It's the question.
I would say that the most significant thing, and what I've been focusing on over the last 6 or 7 years in looking at how do we mitigate climate change, is I realized that fundamentally we have an economic problem. There are ways of restoring soil. It costs money, but farmers don't have the cash. So how are we going to, so that's an economic problem. And then we need to plant trees. That's an economic problem. So the way that we're addressing this is on the farming side, is to work with more and more financial partners that are willing to put up the front money so that we can then give that fertility to the farmer. They're going to make money starting in year 1. They're going to increase their revenue, and then we can pay the investors back out of the increased earnings. So fundamentally, the fact that we can take poorly performing soil and increase revenue, increase production by 300 to 500%, that gives money to share with people who are putting up the money to do this. So logistically, we're talking huge quantities of materials. That is probably what we spend the most time doing, is identifying all the sources of those materials, working out the logistics.
There's like 20 ingredients in the fertility.
But the hard part is economic, and we feel that we've solved that by increasing productivity and revenue so much. Yes?
Go ahead.
I noticed the term cool the earth is used. I know that there's difficulty using the term global warming. Is that to avoid the political sizing of that term? And how do we get scientific data more in the forefront as opposed to political opinions that use for obvious?
I'm not sure that we're the best ones to ask about that. We've tried to keep this to things that relate to us, what we know about. We're farmers, we grow things, whether it's trees or plants or crops, and try to stay out of the larger climate conversation, which we don't have authority or expertise, and nobody would believe us even if we did. So,
People within your inner circle that you're working with and all these great minds are working on a strategy towards making sure that minds like yours are sharing the right information as opposed to...
I mean, there's a lot of discourse from very rigorous scientists about this, building models to when we might be too late, right? And also just the caliber of the water studies and the climate studies and what they're measuring. There's a tremendous amount of activity. I don't know, he's a little shy, and I don't know, I'm not sure this is like exciting for us to go public more. We have been sitting on this. Are we sure? Are we sure? Do we really, like, all of our measurements were done by professors at Princeton and University of Vermont. Like, we didn't just put this stuff, I forgot to say that, but, but it's also not, peer-reviewed 20-year studies either. We have to get to that point, right? So I don't know, I alternate between being so impressed by the caliber of smart minds working on this when you start looking at the papers and rigor and just utter, like,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that we did
concern
this
that
year,
if we can't move this, what else is there? What else is there to tell a farmer right now who can't get enough out of there aren't others, there's a myriad of liquids they can buy in the store and different fertilizer things, but not that has this kind of comprehensive, ability to transform their land.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that we did this year is probably, several dozen people. We brought them out to the field. We showed them the trees. We showed them the crops, and really, there's no substitute for that. Scientists can argue, these statistics versus those statistics all day long, and maybe they'll come to agreement, maybe they won't. But when people come out and they see forage,
they walk through that.
And then they see the control areas. I mean, they can see the same tree, same species, planted at the same time. They can talk to the neighbors, they can talk to the farmer, and verify what has happened. It's just very clear. So I think ultimately that is the answer.
Thanks for the really good question, though. Go ahead, calling somebody.
Yeah.
What might the role of genetically modified crops have to do with interacting with improved soil?
We've pretty much avoided them, so I can't speak with any authority. Really, everything we do is trying to emulate nature. I mean,
And it's organic. All the ingredients in the fertility, I should have said that, are certified organic.
The one thing that a study was done, it wasn't peer-reviewed, it wasn't, was not published in, an authoritative agricultural publication, but a farmer back in 1948, when hybridization was just getting started, took his hybrid corn, planted it in his farm, and then he planted his heirloom varieties of corn that he'd been planting for generations, and they tested nutritional value once the crop had grown. What he found was that the hybrids, which in many cases are bred to not need deficient minerals. In other words, as a farmer, farmers don't necessarily look at the soil tests or understand chemically what's going on. All they know is their yields are going down. So when a seed company, understanding this decline, breeds crops that no longer need minerals that are missing, then the farmer gets his yield back. The farmer's happy, the seed company makes money. The problem is nutritionally, we don't get the food and the minerals that we need. But anyway, so this study was done, and with these new hybrids that have been bred to grow in depleted soil, and those hybrid varieties were tested. They had 16 minerals in them. His heirloom varieties had 24 minerals. So the point is, even though the soil had the minerals, those new hybrid varieties were not taking up those elements so that you didn't have them. Whether you'd have another extension with the genetically modified, I mean, most of the genetically modified crops are modified to tolerate herbicides so that they can spray herbicides without killing their crop. They just kill the weeds. But we don't have a lot of experience in that.
We got some people over here.
Yes? Yeah.
Where are you sourcing the new soil nutrients from? Is it from a scalable source? Do you end up filling to every plant across the country?
Yeah, what we're doing is we have to stick with a region because it takes us months to develop sources of our materials that are close enough, since they're, with the volume, trucking is a huge issue. So we basically, when we go into a new area, we now have a new client in Texas with 20,000 acres, and it's going to take us several months to develop, materials within, let's say, a 500-mile radius. So there's some difference. They're the same materials, but different sources. In order, just as you say, it's got to be scalable and it's got to be close. So it's one of the areas of expertise that we have. Yes?
She's had her hand up here.
What is the cost per acre of supplementing the soil this way? And second question, what is your carbon footprint for producing?
The cost is dependent a lot on where we are and on trucking. So it varies, but let's say somewhere between $800 and $1,200 per acre, just as a ballpark, is what the materials that we put on. That doesn't include, profit for the farmer or anything, but kind of the raw materials is in that ballpark. And as far as our footprint, we're using all non-fossil fertilizer materials. So, we're conventional fertilizers use petroleum products in order to manufacture them. Everything that we're using is a mined material, or it's a microbial inoculant that certainly it takes fuel to run our trucks to bring the material in, but over time, the amount of carbon that we're going to sequester in the soil, it vastly, outstrips whatever, fuel that we took to transport the materials.
Good.
Yes?
I wanted to ask, what are the big chemical companies who stand to lose a lot of business? How do you interact with like the Dow Chemical or Monsanto in a way that they don't become a hindrance to what you're doing?
We're not interacting with it at this point. We're so small that they don't, we're not a concern to them. I think that there's going to be plenty of demand for their products for a long time, and I think there's room for both of us. But anyway, it's something. They're bigger than we are, and potentially, that could be a concern. Yes?
Yeah. You got people over here too, so
Okay,
don't forget.
sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, go. I don't know where to.
Over in the corner? Sure.
Yeah.
When you treat the soil, do you have to do this every year, or is it one time and then maintained?
With our forage system, as long as the farmer takes our advice and plants some perennial legumes, which fix nitrogen, then it's basically a single application that is, we haven't been doing this for enough years to say it's forever, but with 10 tons per acre, we're putting an enormous amount of minerals on there, which will be solubilized by soil microbes over year after year. And then with the perennial-based farming system, the crops are going to be sequestering carbon, building up soil carbon, so that they're improving their soil year after year. So it's meant to be a single
A
application.
jumpstart engine,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
You got people here?
That was my question.
Okay.
Great,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes?
I have a comment, actually. I think this is fascinating, and I didn't know a lot about your work and that kind of thing. I'm a producer of opera, and about a month and a half ago, I saw a presentation at Richardson Auditorium in Princeton that was absolutely amazing. It was put on by the very well-known mezzo-soprano Joyce DiDonato. It's called Eden. Believe it or not, it's based on gardening and that type of
Mhm.
stuff. And it started out with the growth of a tree from the beginning in the environment. And the reason I make this comment is because it's a point of awareness. As important as your work is, I think it's important that people become aware of it as well. That place was packed, probably about 800
Wow.
on a Wednesday evening.
Wow.
It was involved some lighting and everything, but her presentation and the importance that she put on
Trees.
trees was amazing. You can Google it. It's called Eden.
Thank you.
And the mezzo-soprano is Joyce DiDonato. She's very well known throughout the world. She's already brought Eden to 27 cities throughout the world.
Wow.
And she's still going strong.
And she had about the magnificence of trees and what they give us, huh?
I mean, it was, she works with a team, but I think the concept was hers.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
We basically survive. Of course, trees are making oxygen that we breathe. It's not just rain. They're providing habitat for all kinds of organisms. So, and forests literally make soil.
So we have time for one more question. This is excruciating. I think her hands have been up a long time.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. This is fabulous work that you're doing. So for the non-farmers or non-gardeners even, what might be your one or two things of a call to action that you might want us to take from this?
Well, the three fundamentals is, because you can begin to research each of these yourself, is, soils are depleted in terms of all the diverse microbiology. So, the microbes need to be restored. Mycorrhizal fungi is probably the most important one, and you can find sources of this on the web to re-inoculate whatever you're growing. You need to build up soil carbon, which the main way to do that is by keeping plants in the soil growing and photosynthesizing all year, because they put carbon into the soil through their roots. So you build up your soil carbon. Putting organic matter on the surface is helpful, but ultimately you need that carbon in the ground. And then finally, restoring minerals. And there are, you can find rock powders from various sources. One is called azomite, is a commercial name that you can order that on Amazon. So to begin to remineralize your soil over the long term.
Okay, so Cal, I'm going to say a two-line close. The hugest gift I got out of this was to know that we humans evolved with this, and animals too, with this incredible ability to discern flavor, right? So something's delicious, we just want more of it. Well, guess what? The more delicious it is, it's because the nutrients are generating that flavor. In other words, we have the happy success that our bodies, need these minerals, and when something tastes good, it has more minerals than not. So if you eat a mealy, tasteless tomato, orange, most of what we eat is not even good. And that's why the nutrients are missing. So if you go to a farmer's market and you taste something delicious, go back and buy like a bunch of it and give it to your grandkids, because that's my tip. I think.
Ruth, they actually say that about crops that are grown in vertical farms, that they taste very different. So my question for you is, because the way vertical farms are growing around the nation, even globally, have you been able to synthesize the minerals and nutrients in your product where it could be useful in a vertical farming type environment?
The issue with vertical farming is that it's all chemical forms of nutrients. Nature is, soil in nature is biological. You have all this amazing intermediation by all the microbes in the soil that are trying to solubilize nutrients and make them available in a certain way for plants. They actually generate vitamins, they're generating antioxidants.
For the plant.
The microbes themselves. So that when you make a sterile agricultural production system, you miss all that. So food is never going to be the same as it is in soil with all the elements that are needed.
This is really of interest to me because of the industry that we're in, which is data centers.
Mm-hmm.
And we're dealing with the law of unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And data centers are consuming tremendous amounts of power across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
They're also consuming tremendous amounts of water for cooling all the equipment. I have a saying, it's you can't eat data.
Mm-hmm.
And her comment over there about awareness, I think that's really key. And I think there's an opportunity here to do what you're doing and try and create the awareness within the data center community. If we can tie this to the proliferation of data center development around the globe, I think we may be able to help you
we can't do this alone. It's going to take collaboration and, you know, on every level. So
We're also old, so
we're,
we got to get a lot of young people to
You know,
join us.
you know, so we're open to engage and collaborate with everybody that can help. This will be a huge global effort. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.